Well, by popular demand, we are back with a second episode in this now series. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it one, but you guys on the first episode told me how much you enjoyed this concept for a video, so we'll keep it going as long as it makes sense. If you don't know what we're doing today, that means you missed the first part, which you can check out up here. But the bottom line is, you've been exposed to a ton of fragrances. If you watch fragrance reviews or any kind of content on social media dealing with fragrances, you've been exposed to a lot. You've maybe tried a lot. Maybe some of you guys own a whole lot.
Maybe more than you need.
But all that being said, there's a lot of fragrances that you don't know, that you haven't been exposed to, that you don't really see people talking about on social media. So while YouTube and other forms of media can be a great way to get a view into what is trending, what is popular, what is hot on the block, obviously what comes with that is that a lot of good fragrances fall through the cracks. There's stuff you never hear about because it's not being hyped, because it's not being touted as something that gets a ton of compliments or lasts a very long time or whatever. And there's usually no great reason for this. It's just because the right person hasn't got to it yet and hasn't shared their experience with it yet. It's kind of crazy when you think about the dissemination of what becomes popular. It can often be fine lines between something popping off or something staying in the shadows. So using 5 fragrances that you know very, very well as anchor points, I'm going to share with you 5 additional fragrances from the same 5 brands that I have here, but fragrances that are overshadowed by their hype counterparts, so to speak. So I'll be bringing you some anti-hype in this video. Everything I'm going to talk about can be found in the description below, so let's dive right into it. Now, when you hear the name Tom Ford, what is the first fragrance that comes to mind? I would imagine that for most of you, it's this, Ombre leather. Now, there were some of you in the comments on the last video that were giving me some grief, saying things like,
Aventus was not the first Creed fragrance I thought of when you said Creed. The first Creed I thought of was the 1973 release Acier Aluminium, a discontinued polarizing gem of a fragrance. Only a simple basic person's mind would go to Aventus.
And I squint my eyes at you guys. But some of you guys I know are being genuine. Anyway, Ombre leather. You guys know this fragrance. Some of you love it. I like Ombre leather. It's super hyped for its reasons. I understand why. But for me, it's just good. It's quite good. I will say that. But honestly, it's not the first fragrance I decide to reach for when I want to wear something from Tom Ford. But what does it smell like? We already know. It is this kind of sweet floral leather, kind of supple, but does have this dark black leather presence. Smells really great in the air, performs well, seems to be very attractive on most people. But we see this a lot. So what else can we talk about? Well, from the same house from several years prior, unfortunately discontinued, but still available at the discounters, and there's even some decant sites that do have this available, so I recommend checking it out. Noire EDP. This is the originator to the Noire series as we know it today. And while many of its offspring are still available, it did not make the cut. People didn't dig this one. And I understand why, because when I first tried this, I didn't dig this one. In fact, the first negative review I've ever done on my channel, which I did 7 or 8 years ago, was about Tom Ford Noire EDP. And I hated it back then. It was not to my taste at all. To me, it smelled like this powdery, rosy, bitter, old woman fragrance. But now it's so much more than that to me. To me, this is this foggy, fresh rose with this damp patchouli that is a little earthy. There's a powdery nature here. It's woody, maybe a little bit spicy. There's something ethereal about the scent. It just smells very elegant. It smells very evening oriented, something you wear when you're wearing something that looks like this bottle. I think that's really when it shines, and it's a fragrance that you don't spray a lot of because it is kind of weird. And I find that when you overspray weird fragrances or even just slightly spray too much, it just gets weirder. It gets awkward. Everyone's looking at you. You're looking at them. You don't know what to say. They don't know what to say. You go home and cry. You don't want that. I don't spray this more than 3 times, maybe 4 if I'm mostly going to be outside, and especially when it's a little bit cooler. But it's a really special fragrance that no one is really talking about anymore. Again, I know because it's hard to get your hands on, but it's still out there. So I recommend it. And if you've tried it yourself, I want to know what you think of Tom Ford Noire EDP. When I say Cartier, what is the first fragrance that comes to your mind? Some of you guys, it might be Declaration, and I would say Declaration is probably the most popular male marketed fragrance they have ever released, and it's stunning, and it's a timeless masterpiece, and there's a reason why it's been available for like 20 years now. But I think a lot of you guys who have not tried Declaration have tried this, Pasha Parfum, and maybe this is the fragrance you thought of when you think of Cartier. Pasha Parfum is a fragrance I can easily say is worth every bit of hype that it gets. So I'm not trying to put this here and say, stop talking about Pasha. Let's overlook this. Let's talk about something else, because let's be real, compared to a lot of other hyped fragrances, some of which on this list, this hardly gets talked, but it is still pretty well known in the community, and it is a stunning fragrance. It is a beautiful gentleman's fragrance for the evening, for the cooler weather. It's a more ambery, slightly boozy, resinous, woody take on the original Pasha, which is more of an aromatic fougere, more in that barbershop style. Very fresh, spicy, mossy, citrusy. This strips away all of that freshness and brings in this nighttime, sweet, boozy, resinous, masculine feel that is so much fun to wear. But there's a lot of great other fragrances we can talk about from the house of Cartier. What else we got? The first thing I'll say about this one is that I'm not sure how readily available it still is. I think it's still out there. I think it's still being produced, but I can also say that I think it's a little pricey. So do not blind buy this fragrance, but it is really special, at least to me. This is called Mysterieuse number 12 in their Hours collection. I think that's what they call it. And this is a collection I think they created to commemorate Cartier's centennial. But this fragrance is lovely. It is a little odd, but it's so well composed. It is that beautiful combination of simple but unique. Nothing really smells quite like this. It is incense. It's a little smoky, it's a little cold, but it's blended with elemi resin, which brings in this kind of balsamic, piney, slightly sweet feel. And with that is patchouli. And the patchouli in this comes off chocolatey. It is transparent chocolate, quiet, earthy. It's not super in your face, not super woody or pungent. It is really toned down, but it is the foundation of this fragrance. So you get this kind of incensey, sweet, resinous chocolate, which is kind of odd, but it works and it just smells really classy. It's something you can wear pretty much all year round, especially during the evening time. I would not wear this during the day in the summer. Way better fragrances to wear than this, but good Lord, this is elegant stuff. If you happen to have tried this one, and I think few of you have, let me and everyone else know what you think of Mysterieuse. But there's going to be links down in the description if you haven't tried it. All right. Lalique. What's the fragrance? I think I can see it in your head. I see it. It's kind of a square bottle, perhaps black in color. And I see one particular word, Encre. I said that wrong, but I'm just going to say Encre to be incorrect, but keep it moving. Encre Noire. I know that is one of the most popular collections from the house, especially here online, and especially the original or the extreme. Encre Noire à l'extrême. Now, I don't have the original. I think I have several decants scattered somewhere, but I've never owned a bottle of the original, but I do have some experience with it. But nonetheless, this and the original are pretty popular. And I think that if you did not think of the original, you probably thought of this one. And it is a beautiful scent, but you have to like vetiver. Dry, as per the name, a little inky, woody vetiver, a bit bitter, but in this case, it's blended with some resins that kind of soften the bitterness, soften the woodiness, the inkiness. They kind of fill it out a little bit, make it a little bit sweeter, but not necessarily a sweet fragrance. It is still mostly vetiver forward though, so keep that in mind. However, I'm preaching to the choir. You've probably already tried this fragrance because it is pretty dang hyped. So what isn't hyped from Lalique? Well, there's actually a lot that is not hyped from Lalique, but what I have to talk about is this one in a similar bottle style. This is Ombre Noire, and this is a completely different scent profile, not a vetiver forward fragrance. In fact, it's more of a warm, spicy, woody, boozy forward fragrance. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And it is. Now, that being said, it is a slightly understated scent profile. As a personality, it does not scream. It's not vying for your attention. It makes people who get close to you come into your space, catch a whiff, experience your aura and your scent together, and just find something that smells refined and comforting. But at the same time, there is something kind of fun about this fragrance, and I think it is the boozy aspect. And the way it's blended here, it does feel a little bit like nighttime tropical, if I could say such a thing. But it is pretty woody. It's a dry, almost aged wood quality. And it just makes for a very, again, comforting wear, but something that is a little different, not exactly like everything else out there. So I think it's a fairly special scent. It's definitely underrated. I would easily say that. That's Ombre Noire from Lalique. Let me know what you think if you've tried it. Prada. Don't lie, guys. This time I know what you guys are thinking. I know it. And I'm not even that good. This is not my skill. I think we just all know the elephant in the room. When we say Prada, we think of L'Homme. We don't need to make any more fuss about it. It is what it is. But what does L'Homme smell like? You already know. But real briefly, it is clean iris. Clean, soapy iris. Maybe some white floral in there to kind of fill it out. This almost ambery sweet base. It is clean. It is kind of sweet. It is fresh and floral. It's really nice, but it is no stranger to anyone. Your great grandmother knows about Prada L'Homme. And this one is similar to Tom Ford Noire EDP, discontinued, unfortunately, but still available, and maybe even from decant sites. And this is Amber Pour Homme Intense. It's so weird. I'm realizing all of these parallels. Similar to Tom Ford Noire EDP, it's a fragrance that I hated when I first tried it, and it's a fragrance that smells kind of like Noire EDP. This is weird. This is how it went though. I guess I didn't like this type of profile to begin with. Now I can't get enough of it. I really appreciate it. This is dark soap, dark resinous soap. Lots of myrrh resin in this one, but it is kind of clean. It is kind of soapy. Again, maybe for a similar reason to the Tom Ford, not a whole lot of talk about this one because people are not really going out of their way to find it, to sniff it, but you're hearing it from me. If you're watching this video and you trust my taste, I recommend getting a sample of this stuff, and not just because it's discontinued. Do not blind buy it. I don't think it's going to be worth the price you might have to pay for this because it will be an inflated price, but it's a really beautiful scent from a designer brand that doesn't smell mainstream. If that piques your interest, then you might want to check it out. Again, don't just take my word for it. I'm sure there's plenty of you guys who can attest to it down in the comments, so you can listen to your fellow viewers. Let me know what you think of this one. All right, this one I think is pretty clear. Sospiro. Yep, I knew it, you knew it, Vibrato. We all know this is the fragrance that comes to mind when Sospiro is uttered from someone's mouth and swept this community. It just took over people's hearts and wallets when they caught a whiff of it. Apparently this stuff is tried and true, groin gripping, loin drenching goodness. I hope you know I'm being facetious, but there's people who believe that. And if that's your experience, great. But you guys know me. I believe fragrance is so much more than just that. But all that being said, Vibrato is a good smelling scent. It's citrus, powdery, musky. That's really all I get. It's well composed for being simple, doesn't change much on my skin, has good performance for a fresh fragrance, is very versatile. I understand why people like it. I understand the hype. I do think it is incredibly overpriced for what you get as far as an interesting scent, but it's still good. If you got the money, go ahead. However, Sospiro has quite a number of fragrances we can talk about, and I haven't experienced the half of them, and I have one to share with you. This fragrance is not going to be to everyone's taste. You have to like florals. This is super floral heavy, but I would say that the note breakdown is more floral than how it actually smells, but it does smell like flowers, don't get me wrong. This is called Pasticcio. Now I think there's some people who might see this name and think, oh, pistachio. This has nothing to do with pistachio, so remove that from your mind. This is all about flowers. But what does pasticcio mean? Well, when I looked it up in Italian, the best I could find is that it means mess. Now, if you speak Italian and there's some idiomatic translation to the word pasticcio, do let us know. But I think the story of the fragrance from Sospiro is talking about the moment from the time you hear the orchestra on stage, because that's what this line is all about. It's all about music. You hear the orchestra on stage warming up, and if you've ever heard an orchestra warming up on stage, it is pure cacophony. Everyone is doing their own thing all at the same time. You have 60 plus people playing different things at the same time. It's going to sound like a mess. But once the concert commences, once the conductor cuts off the orchestra, gives that first downbeat of the first song, there's this feeling of elation and openness and clarity that comes from that. And I think that's what they're going for here. But all in all, this smells like this fresh, sweet, kind of fruity, citrusy, but buttery, smooth, earthy orris fragrance. It is a ton of florals. I couldn't possibly pick them all apart because there's like every flower in this fragrance. But if I had never tried this, I would let that note breakdown push me away because I'm not really trying to smell all those flowers or smell like all those flowers. But it is not completely floral. It comes together and it congeals as this creamy, sweet, buttery, earthy, floral bouquet that does dry a little bit more woody and mossy and ambery on the skin, and it performs very well if that matters to you. But all that being said, I'm not guaranteeing you're gonna like this, but I think it's a special fragrance that doesn't smell exactly like anything else. If I can paint the picture for you, just to give you some association, it doesn't smell exactly like these, but imagine something like Reflection Man or Le Male or even Armani Code. It doesn't smell like any of those exactly, but it's in that vein as far as a fresh, creamy, powdery, buttery, slightly sweet floral fragrance can go. I know Armani Code and Le Male are not that, but I think you know what I mean in terms of how they come together. I hope that makes sense. I hope you have an idea of what this smells like. Get a decant. Do not blind buy this. For one, it's very expensive. Number two, you may not like it. So sample first. I cannot stress enough, but let me know what you think if you've tried Pasticcio from Sospiro. All right, that's another episode in the bag. I want to know what you guys think of this. If you continue to enjoy my picks here and just this series in general, let me know by liking and commenting. Make sure you're subscribed. Once again, links to everything will be in the description. And thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.